So thank you guys all so much for joining in our opening night film. I really wish that we were all in Green Lake together right now, but instead we're all over the world, across the country. So thank you everyone for tuning in for the last ice tonight. I am so excited to be here. You guys probably recognize one of the people on the screen here from the film you just watched. So we have Maatalii Okalik, who is the Inuit youth advocate in the film. She's joining us here from Greenland. And we have Scott Ressler, the director of the film. So welcome, you guys.
Thank you, Don, and thank you to Freeland Film Festival and to everybody watching at home.
I wanted to get started by asking you, Scott, how you got involved in this project and how you made the connections with the people featured in your film.
Sure. Well, I've been making conservation films at National Geographic for 7 years, and we had decided that we wanted to make a film about the Arctic and started to go up in our preliminary shoots, and we were making a very standard wildlife documentary about polar bear, sea ice loss, basically what you see in the headlines, but it became clear very quickly that this was needed to be a film about people. And one of the luxuries we had was time, which is not often the case for filmmakers, which allowed us to start forging these relationships and really being able to take our time when we'd go into communities, getting to know people, listening, and sometimes not even bringing the camera out. So I think that going in with good intent and sort of an open ear and trust was probably, that's how it went.
Did it take a while to build up that trust with people for you?
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about the history of filmmakers in the Arctic is there's been, uh, countless stories of exploitation or maybe filming without permission or portraying things a certain way. And we really tried to be active participants in sort of understanding what has not worked in the past. And like I said before, just really being open and listening and trying to get it as right as we could.
Maatalii, I wanted to talk to you about the importance of learning your culture from your elders and why it's important to you to teach this culture to the youth. In the film, you talk about how 50% of the population is under the age of 24, which is pretty huge. So can you talk about that a little bit and the work that you're doing?
First of all, Pianamik, thank you so much for having us today and for that question. Like, culture is so important to us as Inuit because it is, you know, what we always say is culture is not a perk, it's our lifeline. I can't survive without my culture. I need my culture to be able to, stand proud with two strong feet on the ground or on the ice. And really, it's because my identity defines who I am. And learning from elders who have gained the knowledge that they have through, the many generations that came before them is what makes me whole as a person. And unfortunately, because, and you see in the last ice that there have been very positive, not positive, assertive assimilation policies that were set in place by the government to take away our culture. And, the last residential school in Canada actually closed in 1998. And my mom, for example, is a residential school survivor. And part of the experiences that that generation before mine had was to take our culture away from us. And so for my generation, it's particularly important for us to revitalize what was taken away and just continue on our right as Inuit to learn our culture to make us whole. As you said, we have a very young population. Unfortunately, that's a very positive statistic that we are over 50% under the age of 24. But on the flip side, there are many negative statistics, like we have 9 times the suicide rate of our fellow Canadians, for example. And the big indicator for suicide in our communities is the lack of access to culture. And so for us, it really is a lifeline. And you know, there aren't many opportunities within our public governance and systems to access our culture. So it's very important that we as individuals make the pledge to continue our cultural practices, and as communities foster those safe places to be able to access our culture as well. But a place like Pilovik Center, which is one of not very many places, um, to have those kind of services, and you know, that learning available for those who don't have access in their homes, because for some people culture may have ended because of residential school. So it's so important that we create those safe spaces for youth, because today it's nobody's fault where they are at with their culture, but it's never too late to start and revitalize what is so important for us as a people.
Yeah, I really value the work that you do, and thank you for doing that. I think it's really amazing and important. Scott, could you talk about the impact that making this film and sharing this story has had on your life personally?
That's a great question. I think for me, one of the biggest things was just learning and taking in a completely different perspective about how to be connected to nature. Because I think one big thing that maybe we've become disconnected with the rest of the world is not seeing how our immediate actions are having an actual impact. And one person that really helped sum this up for me was Alakatsiak in the film. I spent some time with his father, who studies Inuit shamanic religion, and he was saying that the worldview that he has is that his life doesn't belong to him, it belongs to his ancestors and to his descendants. So it's really something you borrow, and then your decisions on a daily basis about what you're going to do are going to affect 3 generations from now or 3 generations before you. So it's part of this unbroken chain. And in the course of making this film, I had 2 kids myself, and so I started to get into that new mindset about how things are going to affect things generationally. And I think that especially when it comes to our impact on the natural world, it's something that I hope everyone can walk away from this film with.
There's a really beautiful label that I see a lot of Indigenous people use, which is future ancestor, and I just love it, and that makes me think of that. Um, so, Maatalii, I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about the impact that the work that you're doing has had on you personally too, and how that's changed your life.
Well, I feel very privileged to have the opportunity to do the work that I do, because for me, as Scott had indicated, it's all about the future. It's not about what I can gain right now as an individual, it's what I can do to prepare the future generations. It's just the way that we are. And so for me, I feel so lucky to be able to do the work that I do. And it also completes me as a person, because with each hunt that I do, I can not only feed myself, but feed my family members and my community members. With each um, sealskin that I work on, I learn more patience, I learn um, more about my language, and I get to, you know, gift the skin or do something with the skin that my ancestors had prepared for me to do. And based on my practice, I get to learn, so therefore I can teach those who come after me. It's really a life cycle that is makes me proud, even more proud to be Inuk. But ultimately, you know, I have the privilege to be able to understand our rights, and also fight for our rights to be met by governments, for example, and the international community. And so understanding, you know, and what it is that we'd like to do as Inuit, which is to preserve and protect and conserve the area that is in the last ice. I feel very lucky that I could talk about it, but also have the film share that story and get all of the strong voices within all of the communities together, and hopefully, I'm very grateful that what like watchers are learning, and also perhaps hopefully standing in solidarity with us with something that's so important to us and our future generations, not just ours as Inuit, but the world's future.
Scott, could you talk about the importance to you as a filmmaker, and Maatalii, you can tag team on this too. The importance of sharing a story that inspires people to not just like learn about what's going on, but to make a change in their own lives.
Sure. Well, I think one of the challenges we had with The Last Ice was taking this big, in some ways, scientific, political story about what's happening in the Arctic and making it personal and accessible for anyone who's watching it. And I think for me, that is paramount in being able to reach an audience. There's certainly been climate change documentaries in the past that have been a bit more clinical, but I think that obviously garnering empathy with the people who are going through this and really sort of turning the traditional notion I think a lot of people have of the Arctic on its head, which is that it's this other place. It's beautiful and it's romantic, but it's somewhere else. And yeah, it is beautiful and it is romantic, but it's also a place where people live in communities and cities, and it's not some distant land that doesn't really exist. So with the film, I was trying to ground that place for people who might never be able to access it, or maybe don't even know that there were people there in the first place, which is something I was shocked to find a lot of people didn't realize.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like for us, it was like, oh, you want to help us tell our story, and I was so like not just me, but I think everybody that we had a chance to meet, and all the great Inuit who took the time to sit down with us and share their story with us, and like talk about how climate change is impacting them, whether they're hunters or community leaders, because infrastructure is falling with mounting permafrost, or whether they were our leaders who are working internationally through the Inuit Circumpolar Council and gathering and making plans to protect the future of our great regions. I mean, everyone that took the time was very honored that National Geographic wanted to help tell that story. And the trust was definitely built going back to the first question, and I'm just grateful for the process, and really Inuit were just happy that our story was being told, because we're the ones who live here and we have the highest stake in what happens in the future of our homeland. So I mean, all in all, a very positive experience for us.
I just wanted to end this by asking if you guys wanted to give forth any calls to action, or where people can go to, whether it's donate, support, or just learn more about, well, you know what, Scott, your career, Maatalii, the work that you're doing.
I'll defer to Maatalii.
Okay, well, first, I mean, like I said, I reference our Inuit governance, the Inuit Circumpolar Council. We are still working through the Pikiala Commission to see the 3 recommendations through. It's still in the talks with the different nation states that preside over the Pikiala region. So I would just say, like, to follow along the Inuit Circumpolar Council, and just, I would appreciate you standing in support with us as we try and get that achieved. Yeah, so I would say Inuit Circumpolar Council is where you can keep in touch on what's happening with our great hope as Inuit. Scott?
Scott?
Well, if you have any interest in following some of our broader conservation work, pristineseas.org would be the website to check out.
And if people want to share this film outside of the festival in the future, does this have any Nat Geo release date or anything like that yet? Or is there a website they can go to follow?
So the film will be premiering on National Geographic in October. The release date is being set, and domestically at first, and then internationally in the weeks that follow.
Awesome. Well, we've gotten a lot of comments in the chat, some people thinking that this story was really beautiful and wonderful. So thank you guys so much for sharing your story with us. and for taking the time to talk with me tonight and all the people watching. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dawn, and thank you to the audience and to Freeland Film Festival again.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Thank you so much. Take good care, everybody.
Okay, bye. Thank you.